If you've been running with shin splints or you're trying to avoid shin splints this year, especially if you're increasing mileage or intensity, then keep watching this video. Today we are talking about 5 ways that you can avoid shin splints, so let's get started. Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa, a physical therapist that helps runners prevent and treat injuries, and I see shin splints all the time. And these 5 tips, especially tip number 4, are usually done wrong. Usually when someone has shin splints, they are stretching their calves with static stretching like this, maybe even on a curb, or they're taking 2 weeks off from running or icing their shins. All of which can help decrease the pain, but it's not fixing the source of why the pain's coming on. So let's dive into tip number 1 to avoid shin splints, and that is to decrease your intensity of your runs. Too often, runners are going out too hard, too fast, too often, and therefore the body doesn't have enough time to recover. I remember when I was training for a half, even a year ago, and I would just go out the door. Every run was just full on as hard as I could go. When I started dialing down into the 80-20 rule, which means 80% of my runs were very easy. You can use the word slow if you want. Very conversational pace, a pace where I would say to myself, I feel like I could go at this pace for a very long time. Now, just as an example, I ran 11 and 12 minute miles for a majority of my runs, and I ran a 4:22 marathon for my first marathon. So go out easy, build that aerobic base, and the other 20% are where you can start adding in hills, sprints, tempo runs, interval runs, fartleks. That's where you're increasing your speed and increasing your heart rate as well, because you're increasing your speed. So then when it's time to actually work on speed, you're able to go all out. You're able to really increase that speed, and then you pull it back for the majority of your run. And that will help the overall goal of avoiding shin splints, which is to decrease the load through your shins. Moving on to tip number 2. If you're having pain and you're having shin splints, specifically pain in the front of your shin that maybe starts when you're running and then it stops once you're done running, I want you to pull back into a walk jog. Now, a good rule of thumb that I tell my clients is if you're having more than light pain, so light pain on that 0 to 10 pain scale, 0 is absolutely no pain, 10 is the most pain you've ever had. If you're having more than a 3 out of 10 pain, then you need to pull back mileage, pull back speed, or drop into a walk jog. As you do this, you should be rehabbing those shin splints, working on rehab exercises versus just trying to rest it, because shin splints don't need rest. They need exercises that address the weaker areas, the areas where maybe your joint's a little bit stiffer, which we'll get into later, but resting shin splints is not the answer anymore. Research has showed that it's just not as efficient as jumping into exercises. So drop into a walk jog. My favorite one to drop into right away, 3 minutes on, 1 minute of walking. So again, that's a jog. That is not a full-on run. You are going at a very, very easy pace when you are jogging. Tip number 3 is to increase your step rate, aka increase your cadence. This is done wrong all the time, because if I'm telling someone to increase their cadence, they might look like taking those short, choppy steps. And before they were doing that, maybe they were even overstriding, but they were taking larger steps. So when I tell you to increase your step rate or increase your cadence, what that really means is a 5 to 10% increase, which is not a lot if you think about it, especially if you're going at an easier pace. So at an easier pace, your cadence is going to be a little bit lower because your stride length isn't as long and your speed is not, you're not going at a faster pace. So it's okay if your cadence is lower. Again, there's no magic number for cadence. So a good rule or cue that I like to tell people is to drive your knee forward as you're running to increase your cadence. It is not about the number that you are increasing your cadence to. It is more about how your running form is transformed through this increase in cadence. I do not care if you have 180 steps per minute. What I care about is how your running form looks with the 180 steps per minute. Again, no magic number with cadence. So as you're running, I want you to focus on driving your knee forward versus up. If I tell you to increase cadence, you see that quick, maybe you've tried this before, you have that quick leg turnover where it's like you're going nowhere fast and it's like really exhausting even though it's supposed to be an easy run. So what I want you to do instead, don't worry about the quick choppy steps, it's not efficient. What I want you to do instead is focus on driving your knee forward versus up. It should not be a high knees movement. That is not how you're supposed to be running. Tip number 4 is often forgotten about. I feel like it's one of the most important ways to avoid shin splints. That is to increase the strength in your calves. I want you to go through this test. We've all heard of just strengthening your calves in double leg and then with your knees bent, which is great, but we run in single leg. So let's start to strengthen our calves into a single leg position, but I want you to test the strength of your calves first. And you can hold on to the wall if you need to. You're gonna perform 20 single leg heel raises in a row, then compare it to the other side. So if you only have shin splints on one side, compare how you're doing with those 20 single leg heel raises. If you can only get to 10 on the one that you have those shin splints on, you can get to 18 on the other one, that's a good sign you need to strengthen your calf in that single leg position. So start to do that. You can hold on to something. Single leg heel raises are not a balance exercise, so you can hold on, but I do want you to practice pushing your big toe into the ground as you lift your heel up. Make sure you're lifting your heel up, all the way down. You're not just trying little lifts. This is not efficient. So make sure you lift it all the way up, all the way down, so you're strengthening your calf through your entire range of motion on a level surface to up and down. Moving on to tip number 5, and that is to improve your ankle mobility. I want you to put your leg near a wall, or you can use a foam roller, and you're just gonna put that foam roller about 4 to 5 inches away from your foot. So your toes, you can also use your hand as reference. And all you're gonna do here, keeping your heel on the ground, toes are facing forward, bend your knee forward and try to touch your knee to the foam roller or the wall. Now you're gonna switch, compare the other side and bend. I want you to feel if one side feels tighter, one side feels okay, you're lifting your heel up, any sort of compensation, because you need enough ankle mobility when you run to absorb the shock from the ground. If your ankle is stiff, maybe you've heard those people that are like, yeah, they don't have a lot of ankle mobility and therefore they're stomping because they're not able to absorb the shock and then disperse the shock throughout the lower extremity. And it all starts with the foot and ankle. So we have to work on our ankle mobility. You can do this before a run. If it's stiff or maybe you're lifting your heel up, all I want you to do is flow through this mobility move. You're not holding it, you're just working on that mobility of the ankle to improve that ankle mobility. If you tie all those 5 tips together, you'll be able to avoid shin splints. There's a lot of other things that go into shin splints, such as increasing your mileage too quickly, not giving yourself any rest days. So consider those other things as well, and I hope this video was helpful. I'll see you next time.